Greetings, Honorable Mayor and members of Council. I write to you tonight in regards to a motion that will be coming forward to Council on May 30th in regards to the Ridgetown Scout Hut. First, I would like to give some background about the first Ridgetown Scout Group and some history of the building you will be deciding the future of. First Ridgetown Scout Group was one of the earliest scout groups to be founded in our area. Starting in 1913 in the basement of an Anglican parish on Church Street, and for the next few years, the Scouts met in various church halls in the community. In 1932, with the help of the sponsor, the Dolphin Club, Scoutmaster Dr. Walter Lake, and Scouter Dr. E.W. Irwin, the Scouts built a clubhouse on the land adjacent to the water tower in front of the current Scout Hut. Logs for the project were donated by Rondo Park to be milled into lumber by Fred Kennedy at no cost. In 1935, the Rotary Club of Ridgetown assumed the role of sponsor of the first Ridgetown Scout Group. In 1966, it was decided to sell and move the original Scout Hut to make way for a new and improved one. On Sunday, September 24th, 1967, thanks to the generous donation of the Rotary Club of Ridgetown, the ribbon was cut on the new Rotary Centennial Scout Center, September 28th, 1967, in the Ridgetown Dominion. The ribbon was cut by the Queen's Venture Scout and a Girl Guide. Mayor J.A. Ross McDonald accepted the keys on behalf of the town of Ridgetown and said the town would be responsible for maintaining the building. This was also in the Ridgetown Dominion, September 28, 1967. The Ridgetown Scouts and Guides have used this space off and on for the last 55 years. The Ridgetown Scouts have used it for 42 of those 55 years and have been conducting Scout meetings in both versions of the Scout Hut for 78 years. We have done this through all sorts of major events, especially, most recently, the global COVID pandemic. Throughout the pandemic, we kept a program going even though other youth programs had to close. When we could meet in person, we did so at the Scout Hut. When COVID restrictions wouldn't allow us to meet indoors, the Scout Hut was still a key rally point. And it contains all of the equipment that helps us run a dynamic, award-winning, national recognized program. As recent as August of 2019, First Ridgetown was to host over 160 youth from Kent and Cornwall, England, for a Welcome to Canada's banquet. They were on tour of North America after their stay at the World Scout Jamboree in the United States. Scouters from various troops in Chatham-Kent approached us about hosting this event because the UK Scouts and Scouters wanted to see what a typical small town in Canada was like. We had everything they were looking for. Hardworking volunteers to pull the banquet together, the Rotary and Ridgetown Scouts, a beautiful small town, a grocery store packed with Canadian chips and brand new British imports stores that the homesick Brits cleaned out. And last but not least, we had free use of the Ridgetown Scout Hut. Our Scout group and hut is not just a home for the youth. We pull youth and adult members from a large area of Chatham-Kent and beyond. Besides Ridgetown, we have members from Blenheim, Cedar Springs, Erie-O, Rondeau, Chatham, Muirkirk, Highgate, Bothwell, Thamesville, Newbury, and Rodney. Scouting is a great program that teaches us youth confidence. Confidence in their abilities to live in the outdoors, confidence to be leaders in the communities. It teaches responsibility to oneself and their community. It teaches youth to be prepared, to do your best, and to do a good turn daily. And at its most basic level, sharing, sharing, sharing. These are some of the principles that have guided me through the life as an Eagle Scout and a member of the World Scout movement, and I hope that they are passed on to my kids and generations to come. Scouting is not cheap or easy. There is a national fee each family pays for their child to be in the Scouting program. That fee goes to nationals to cover liability. We do some of our own fundraising, which goes towards our program and outdoor equipment. Having free access to meeting space helps greatly to keep cost of Scouting affordable for a lot of families. Having the space be the only municipality-owned gymnasium in Chatham-Kent is what helps making our Scouting program great. It is more than just a hall or a meeting space that not enough adults are using, or just some building that doesn't make money. It's an investment. It's an incubator that has and hopefully will keep turning our great future citizens and leaders. This brings me to the present. The motion being brought forward to you today, I think the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown is an excellent organization. They have done many fine things in our community of Ridgetown. One can take a short drive through our town and see signs of their accomplishments everywhere you turn. At first glance, the notion of Kiwanis taking over control of the Scout Hut would appear to be something that would be okay. However, the lack of information shared with our Scout group has been very concerning. We were the first notified that the Kiwanis Club was looking at acquiring the Scout Hut on February 18th of this year. We were reassured that nothing would change for the Scouts and that we would be including in any future meetings pertaining to the Scout Hut changing management. However, during an impromptu informal discussion on April 16th with a member of the Kiwanis, we were informed that we will be charged anywhere from $50 a week or maybe $1,500 a year. There was still no offer of a meeting between our groups or with anyone from the municipality. At this point, we began to worry about how we would plan for the fall if we did not know what our costs would be. We found out about the meeting would take place on May 5th at the Scout Hut. Representatives from First Ridgetown Scouts were not invited. May 9th, a recent member of the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown and a councillor for Ward 3, John Wright, brought forward the motion that is before you today, item 17B. A motion for the Kiwanis Club to take over full control of the Ridgetown Scout Hut for $1 per year for the next 3 years. What is lacking in the motion is the mention of the continued and historic free use of the Scout Huts by Scouts and Guides, or any mention of all scouting groups and youth being a primary user of the building. 3 weeks later, still no meeting, still no form commitments. I have had a lot of time to think about the Scout Hut situation. There are basic repairs that are not looked into after, in spite of repeatedly reporting the problem. There are improvements that long ago should have been made. Many times, some of us Scouters have discussed just getting our hands dirty and taking care of it ourselves. But then we consider other incidences where we have heard of where people have done the same and gotten in trouble for it. I think that it would have been nice if the municipality had approached all stakeholders in the community about finding ways to improve the Scout Hut situation instead of looking for a quick way to divest themselves from being responsible for it. A Friends of the Ridgetown Scout Hut might have been a great approach. Possibly looking for a corporate sponsorship would have been a great community partnership. For these reasons mentioned above, I'm having a hard time finding anything in this motion to be positive about. I don't think communication with our users of the Scout Hut has been clear and consistent to any point in the process. I have been told by councillors and members of the community that it is already a done deal. The meetings have taken place with officials and it's just waiting for council's seal of approval. It makes me worried about our new landlord-tenant relationship will work out and has put great stress on some of us that just want to continue the great Scout program. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Hopefully I was able to provide some insight into the history and concerns of the Ridgetown Scout Hut and the First Ridgetown Scout Group. Good luck with making your decision. Adam Frazee, Scouter for the First Ridgetown Scout Group and 22 resident of Ridgetown. In addition to that, a couple paragraphs from Laura Webb, and she is a mother of 2 Scouts and administrator for the First Ridgetown Scouts and an 11-year resident at Ridgetown. I am a mother of 2 and a Scout administrator for the Ridgetown First Scouts. My son is a current Cub Scout and has 5 years now in the troop. My daughter joined as a Beaver this year after trying dance and various other activities. They both have found a great activity that they can now enjoy together. My son tried soccer, baseball, and skating, and it was just not for him. He's going to be a paleontologist someday, and in his words, Scouts help him prepare for the big outdoor world. They have both made friends during their time with Scouts and have lasting memories of adventures they would not otherwise have the opportunity to have in other activities. That being said, we Scouters are very concerned about the motion brought forward by Councillor Wright regarding the building Scouts have called home for 55 years. We have done this through all sorts of major events, especially most recently through a global pandemic. Throughout the pandemic, we kept the Scouts program going though other youth programs had to close. We could not meet in person, and we did so at the Scout Hut. When COVID restrictions would not allow us to meet indoors, the Scout Hut would still be a key rally point. It contains all equipment that helps us run a dynamic, award-winning, nationally recognized programs. We are imploring Council to amend the motion to include the Scouts, who have called this place our home. It's not called the Youth Center to residents here. It is called the Scout Hut. To not include us has left some of us Scouters with sleepless nights, wondering where some of the youth will end up who didn't fit in the sports box around here. Yours in Scouting, mother of two and administrator of the Ridgetown Scouts, Laura Webb.
The next deputation is from the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown. The Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown was chartered in 1947. Over the years, the club's commitment to promoting active lifestyles has remained constant. Members spearheaded the drives to build the East Kent Memorial Arena, the swimming pool, tennis courts, the splash pad pavilion. The club has made donations to the Center, Ridgetown and Area Adult Activity Center. Since 1950, Kiwanians have organized the annual Santa Claus Parade, a highlight of the year for the community's children. Since 1990, the club has organized the annual Teddy Bear Picnic, which draws children and families from across the municipality, with all proceeds going to the Children's Health Foundation at the London Health Sciences Centre. The club's service activities in the Ridgetown community have continued to grow. We have strong ties with the Ridgetown schools, volunteering for reading and breakfast programs and funding library book purchases, barbecues, and Christmas dinners. Kiwanis youth organizations are our pride and joy. The RDHS Key Club for the high school was chartered in 1955, and the Elgin Club for disabled adults was chartered in 2008. These programs teach the youth the joy of service and leadership skills. Society has changed, and in response, our club is changing too. We have moved from being meeting-driven to mission-driven, providing members with fun, fellowship, and opportunities to perform service that is relevant to them and their community. Our latest mission-driven project was an idea brought to us about saving the Rotary Scout Hut in Ridgetown, which is owned by the municipality of Chatham-Kent. Currently, this building has little activity for community use with the exception of the Ridgetown Scouts. We are all aware that this building is being reviewed and has been reviewed to determine if it's a viable asset for the municipality of Chatham-Kent. At the current state, this building is at risk, as it has been for many years, due to expenses and lack of use. This is an amazing building that the Ridgetown Rotary built many years ago for the Scouts, and it has never been the intention of the Kiwanians to dismiss the Rotary Club for their contribution to this building and our community, and want a continued success for the Ridgetown Scout groups. However, we need to find a way to cost recover for running this building without causing financial hardship to the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown. After reviewing utility costs of approximately $6,000 in 2019, since then, the only rental income for the Scout Hut has been the Elections Canada and a private family Christmas, which generated approximately $1,200. The Kiwanis Club is looking to plan to rejuvenate the use of this building with rentals and these costs. In order to cover the utility costs, we would need to generate over $120 per week. The Kiwanis Club is interested in establishing a 3-year plan to make this a viable community center again. We are offering to take over running of the building, including rentals. However, we're requesting financial assistance from the municipality to cover utilities for the next 3 years. Our club needs to build this into a viable community center. This would require a few improvements to start the available grants that we would apply to help make these improvements in the future. We believe we can become self-sufficient in taking over running of this building and making it a successful community center. The Scouts use the building Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday and have use of a storage area that is approximately 10 by 20. We have no intention of changing these days and storage being available to them going forward. However, currently they do not pay rent, as they made an agreement with the municipality to clean the building in exchange for rent. In the past, they paid $20 per hour for rent. We propose that in the future, they would pay $50 per week for the 32 weeks used. The Kiwanis Club would hold our meetings on Thursday night, as we also would pay the $50 per week for meeting space and use the 10 by 10 storage area. Although this is a financial change from the Scouts, they have many ways that they could request financial assistance, whether it is through Rotary, our club, Howard Mutual Foundation, or even hold their own fundraisers to help them pay the rental costs, which they have paid in the past. We believe that many groups such as Kiwanis, Rotary, Scouts, East Kent Celebrates Committee, Adult Activity Center, 4-H, Akanon Club, Key Club, IODE, CK summer programs, as well as the community can make this a viable building again. In April, we held our 2022 Easter egg hunt with the Rotary Club, and going forward, plan to continue making this our Easter egg hunt location. Along with this event, there are many other ideas we hope to run with many of the groups listed above. 4-H events and the 4-H annual banquet, haunted Halloween room, vendor events for fundraisers, family reunions could have a place inside for the adults, splash pad, pool, and playground for the kids, meeting Santa Claus after the parade, monthly teen dances, monthly movie nights, exercise classes with various groups could look at renting, basketball clinics or a basketball club, outside training companies needing facilities for training such as first aid, and private family rentals for events. These are just a few of the ideas of how this building can become a viable community center for every group and everyone in the community. We believe that the Scout Hut, which we would like to refer to in the future as the Ridgetown Community Center, can be brought back to enhance the local community, improve recreation and social activity for persons of all ages. We will continue to encourage the public and other service groups' involvement in the activities of the premises to make this building a true community center. Thank you, the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown.
Next deputation is by Angela Willis-Croft Frazee, Group Commissioner for the 1st Ridgetown Scouts. Mayor Caniff and councillors, I write to you today with concern over agenda item 17B, the proposal to hand over the Ridgetown Rotary Youth Scout Hut to the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown for $1 per year. There is a long-standing history with this building and the previous Scout Hut in the same location dating back well over 70 years. Built for scouting, guiding, and other youth-minded groups, as well as access to the community at large. This building was gifted to the town of Ridgetown to provide future generations the opportunity to have a meeting space which includes an indoor gymnasium. Since my family has been directly involved in the 1st Ridgetown unit for the last 7 years, we have provided voluntary janitorial services for the building. We were told this was an agreement in our contract for the trade-off for free meeting space, and upon review, it was not in any of our contracts. Regardless of that fact, for many of the events held by other rental groups, our group has stepped in to assist with setting up tables for their events, as well as tear down at the end of their events, as well as cleaning and mopping of the building. We report any problems to the Parks and Recreation Department. Over the years, we have seen a sharp decline in vandalism and mischief, and an increase in respectful use in the skate park and surrounding park areas. We are not just a user of this space, we are a true partner, and feel we should have been taken into consideration as a stakeholder before the building is handed over. One key feature of scouting is the focus on community service and citizenship. It's not about academic grades or athletic ability. While these can be an important part of development, it is also for youth that don't fall into those categories. Scouting provides a safe space for youth to challenge themselves and connect with their peers, practice service to community, and where they are accepted and have the opportunity to grow into active adults and leaders in the community. The World Organization of the Youth Movement published an impact report around the world. Consistently, Scouts scored higher than non-Scouts in many areas, some of which include physical activity, life skills and employability, leadership, problem solving, emotional intelligence, diversity, active citizenship, resilience, responsibility and trustworthiness, teamwork, pro-environmental, and feeling of belonging. Our group doesn't just provide leadership for Ridgetown youth. We encompass South Kent, with families coming from Cedar Springs, Blenheim, Erio, Rondo, Highgate, Thamesville, and beyond our CK borders. Each Scout in your own community may be affected by this decision. This is not just a Ridgetown decision. It affects children in so many communities, and each of those 25 families, plus the more than 10 leaders from all over the outset communities, bring their shopping revenue to Ridgetown and boost our economy right here in town. The Scout Hut is not just a building. It is a community hub that should be shared by all. There are so many opportunities for its usage, especially with the only gym accessible to the public. It just needs a little organization. It was removed from the CK portal as a rental facility. We do not know when or for how long it was not listed on the rental site. We brought it to the attention of the municipality when we attempted to book an event this past spring. The municipal staff member advised they were told to leave it off the site. All other rental facilities in the municipality were were listed and available for rent, and the exception of the Ridgetown Scout Hut. It is difficult to collect revenue off of a rental that is not advertised as available. We have been made aware that the municipality and the Kiwanis Club have been in talks for some time about the possible acquisition of the facility by the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown. On the surface, this may seem like a great opportunity. The Kiwanis Club has been a part of many successful projects in our community. However, we have our concerns. On February 18th of this year, we were informed by a member of Kiwanis of their intention to acquire the Scout Hut for use as their own meeting space and that they intended to take over the management of it. This person assured us we, Scouting, had nothing to worry about and that our usage of the facility would remain unchanged from the way it has been for the last few years. They also stated that we would be included in future meetings pertaining to the possible transfer of management of the Scout Hut. Here we are at the end of May. A motion has been brought forward. Meetings have been conducted, and our Scout group has not been included in any of the process. There has been no public input, announcements in the paper, or online, other than to listen to your May 9th council meeting. Our concerns stem from the fact that we have not been able to get a consistent answer to what the cost of this new arrangement will be to our group. Some representatives from Kiwanis have told us $50 per week will be charged. Others have said nothing will be charged as the hut was built for us with this arrangement. We have been told that we will lose some of our storage, but not how much or when this will likely take place so that we can find alternative storage. I am sure you all can understand how this could make planning for our future extremely difficult and stressful. I am very concerned that the lack of communication is an indication of what is to come with the future management of the building. I ask Council to take our group into consideration and allow all stakeholders to have a voice in the process. Thank you for your time on this urgent matter. Sincerely, Angela Willis-Croft-Frazee, Group Commissioner, 1st Ridgetown Scouts.
Mr. Mayor, that's the end of the deputations, and we'll move into consent agenda. The following items to be pulled this evening. Items 15A, tourism bike use rental pilot project, pulled by Councillor Latimer. The motion of Councillor Sakachi regarding the Blenheim Business Park is pulled by Councillor Sakachi. And the motion of Councillor Carmen McGregor will not be voted on this evening as she's not putting it forward. Item 16C, Community Market Housing and Rent to Own Program, pulled by Councillor Kirkwood-White and Councillor Latimer. Item 17A, the Blue Box Transition to Extend Producer Responsibility Model. It'll be a presentation by staff and pulled by Councillor Latimer. Item 17B, the motion of Councillor Wright regarding the pilot project for the Ridgetown Scout Hut has been pulled by Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Latimer. And item 17D, the motion of Councillor Sakachi regarding the municipal grass cutting has been pulled by Councillor Sakachi, but also a conflict of interest by Councillor Thompson. Therefore, the remaining reports will be approved in the consent agenda, and they are 12A, B, 13A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, item 14A, item 16A, B, and D, and item 17C.
Councillor Thompson and Councillor Wright, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
I'll move it.
Happy to second it then.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillors,
I think someone ended the poll for us. We'll have to relaunch.
Okay. Can you relaunch, please? Yes, thanks. Council, we're going to relaunch that. We think it was stopped in the middle, so we'll relaunch and we'll just ask Council to vote again. 1 second, please. Okay, please vote. All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
We've got item 15, community development.
15A, tourism bike use rental pilot project REOI report.
Councillor Latimer, you had a question.
Thank you, through the mayor. I did. I sent them ahead to Andrea and Audrey.
But I wondered if they could just, there wasn't a whole lot about other municipal e-bike projects or rental programs with regard to our neighboring municipalities. Andrea, I think she has an answer to that.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Caniff. Thank you for your question, Councillor Latimer. Regarding the other municipalities, they were referenced in the original report to council that came for your consideration on December 6th. I am happy to review just a few points of them, if that would be helpful.
Well, specifically with regard, I wanted to know what the financial structure and how they were funded, and what's the cost to the respective municipalities, and how they're finding it's working out. That's what I'm most interested in.
Specifically, the ones within our region, Elgin County, they have discontinued their pilot project. They ran the project over COVID and then made the decision to discontinue that. The financial structures, I'm sorry, I'm just looking for my notes here. I apologize. So the financial structures of the municipalities were also addressed in the December 6th submission, and they vary. They detail a variety of operating and funding models, ranging from municipality funded and operated models to complete third-party agreements, which required no municipal investment or responsibility.
Do we have any information about what the outcomes of these, or whether or not they're sustainable, or whether the issues they're having with them? I got the report December 6th, but I didn't have any updates on anything. That's what I was kind of looking for.
Okay. The Elgin Project was a pedal bike docked program. And as I mentioned, that pilot was not renewed. They decided based on ridership that it was not feasible to renew the pilot. They also had some issues with the commitment of ongoing funders. Some of their funding was not recommitted. The other concern, or the other challenge that they discovered, was that they did not have sufficient infrastructure within their small community to sustain that project. On the other hand, the e-scooter program in Windsor, which was, and sorry, just to reference the Elgin Project, the municipality did fund that themselves. Yeah. The other hand, the e-scooter program that ran in Windsor actually expanded to include an e-bike program, and they were operated by a third party that funded themselves. There was no financial responsibility for the program assigned to the city itself. And then London was another close community that we looked at. They have extended their research and investigation timeframe, and potentially will be looking at going to RFP later this year because of COVID and several other challenges that came up. They have extended and are not implemented at this time.
Alrighty. So you did send, Audrey and yourself did send back to me, you're saying technically the e-bike rental pilot with the community businesses could proceed right away with any interested businesses, because there's no municipal financial responsibility towards that. But the bike docking requires more work, right? Because that would involve municipal property and time and infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera.
Potentially, that's correct.
Yeah. So I just wondered, I did send a motion through just with some direction, basically, saying entering direction to enter into discussion. with Demon Electric Ride and any interested community businesses about the implementation of an e-bike rental pilot project in Chatham-Kent, and return to council with recommendations for operational options and any associated municipal cost implications for July 11th, 2022. It'd be great if you could get the e-bike rental going with the businesses who are interested, if there's no cost to the municipality. But I am interested. I know, and Councillor McGrail's motion that kind of, along with mine, kind of was a catalyst for this project. They were looking at the bike docking. So I just wondered if we could get that information back by July 11th. And if I could have a seconder, then I look for discussion or input from any other councillor.
Councillor McGrail.
I will second.
Okay. Anything else to add, Councillor Latimer?
Nope, that's about it. I want to thank Andrea for her report and Audrey for following this up. I know it's the Elgin project. I think part of the problem was that they tried to initiate it and evaluate it over the COVID program, but for all intents and purposes, I've got a couple of phone calls from people in the city or in Chatham proper that are asking if there would be the potential for a citizen long-term rental of e-bikes at personal cost with charging at-home credit initiatives. And I don't know anything about that. And I'm wondering, like perhaps the report that's coming back to council would have some examples of these initiatives that are happening in neighboring municipalities.
One of the strengths of the respondent is that they are extremely flexible and willing to work within whatever requirements that our communities have, whether that be the Demon Electric in-person bike rentals, which are also e-bikes, or the RIDE program, which is the docked program that you mentioned. I'm sure if we approach them looking at requesting options for those long-term access, they would be willing to discuss that and negotiate that as part of their services as well.
Well, with the cost of gas, I think these individuals had called me and just asked if that was going to be an option here in Chatham-Kent, and I said, "Oh, I'm not sure." So we'll look forward to the report,
and we will look into that for you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll put this to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0. Moving on to the next item, motion by Councillor Sakachi regarding Blenheim Business Park.
Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Judy, is it possible to put it on the screen right now? I'm just having a problem with my other laptop, unfortunately.
It is up there now, Councillor Sakachi.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So basically the recommendation would be the subsequent to the upcoming provincial election, administration requested meeting with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to discuss alternative solutions to resolve the ongoing Blenheim Business Park matter, and an administration report back to council.
Councillor Latimer, will you second that?
I sure will.
Okay, Councillor Sakachi.
Yeah, thank you. Through your worship, I guess I just wanted to have a couple quick comments to if Mr. McAllister is on, and I'm guessing that he is. So I brought a similar motion back, I think it was the end of either 2019 or 2020. And I just wanted to have kind of some discussion on kind of what's transpired since that and how many meetings and conversations we've had with the provincial government in regards to the Blenheim Business Park.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, subsequent to your motion, and it was just before COVID, we did meet with provincial representatives actually in Toronto at the time with the, I think it was still the Ministry of Environment and Climate Conservation and Parks at the time was the name of the ministry at the time. We're trying to get to a point of exploring options and how to move forward with this. Just for context, just so everyone's aware, there's about 15 acres within the Blenheim Business Park that has been identified as habitat for endangered species, and that's the reason why it's in the condition it is right now. We've been trying to find a solution to work through whether it's a permitting process or other options to see if there's some resolve to this. One of the changes after that discussion, it was just a few months later, there was new legislation introduced to the Endangered Species Act, and it was suggested at the time we might want to consider the impacts of how we might move forward, because there might be some proposed regulations coming forward. It's taken some time. I don't know whether it was COVID in terms of getting those regulations. I noticed there's a couple that were approved just in the last couple months, but I'm not sure if there's more forthcoming in terms of how we might move forward with this in a somewhat expeditious fashion, because when we reviewed this before, it was going to be somewhat of a time-consuming and frankly an expensive process and to resolve this, given the size of the property. So we thought we'd best see if there's some alternatives. So with the nature of this motion tonight, I think it's good we can revisit this, as we said, subsequent to the provincial election, once the new cabinet's established, and meet with these various ministries to kind of revisit what a path forward might be for some resolve to this situation.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Just wanted to say a couple of comments, though. So I have had a couple of conversations with staff regarding, the past motion, and it does seem like there is some more ability for us to keep advocating. As you said, it's a very large chunk of land. It's 15 acres. And I think at the end of the day, the residents in South Kent, and as well as all the residents in the municipality, need to know what we're doing with this chunk of property. 15 acres that is, ready to, open for business, so to speak, that is, kind of waiting under the umbrella of, a species at risk is significantly challenging. And as council, as well as, the mayor knows that I'm a very big advocate, the species at risk, but at the end of the day, there has to be some, some common sense to the issues as well. So, if the province is looking for another bird sanctuary, then maybe that's something that we can explore, that they can purchase the property from us, and they can have a bobolink, bird sanctuary, and we can invest, that money into a different part, in Chatham-Kent. So, it's very troubling, and I understand COVID. I understand that staff is trying, but it is troubling to see, we're at the position now in the municipality where we have people looking to invest in ready services areas. We have 15 acres that's dedicated to a business park. We're talking about, the gas plant, the initiatives, the money that's coming there, the development in Blenheim area, development in Ridgetown. This is a time that we need to open these lands up, or to move on and reinvest maybe some money that the province is willing to shell out to start a new wildlife sanctuary. So just hoping that the administration can bring this to the table. And I do applaud Mayor Caniff's efforts in being very cordial and having great relationships with the province. Hopefully those relationships can help us in this matter, but really looking forward to a resolution for all the residents that all of us council members advocate for. Thank you.
Councillor McGregor, followed by Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, and through the mayor, and I apologize for no camera. My internet is cutting me in and out tonight, so hopefully I get through this. I'm just curious if with AMO coming up, if anybody has considered possible delegations in this or other regards to this, as after the election, even the ministers that are in their current portfolios may change, whether it's a change in governance or whether it's just a realignment after the election. So I'm just curious if anybody's considered to keep this matter forefront and to bring it in front of the different ministers and departments at AMO through delegation process. And I don't know who can answer that, so. And if not, maybe we should consider that before the deadline hits.
Thank you, Your Worship. Were you going to speak to that? I saw your phone up, or did you want me to?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Yes. So we thought about that, and I think the better approach is, if at this point in time, if we could go directly to these various ministries, I think is maybe a more beneficial approach. It's been there before. It's actually gone to AMO before. I think back in 2018, it was brought forward, this issue. And here we are today, frankly. So I would suggest, I guess it could go to AMO, but I think this is a specific enough issue that if we could get some meeting time with these two various ministries, I think that would go a long way right after the, not long after the election. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. And yeah, definitely can consider this. I think you're probably at this point going to have a difficult time prior to the election getting that. And I'm not exactly sure of the deadline. And just as a thought, and I think the deadline is the end of June for these, and the election should be over. But I'm just thinking, if you don't secure meetings, that maybe that before our time is up might be another venue if you're not having any luck post-election. So just thought. Thank you.
Tony, you had something to add to that before I go to Councillor Bondi?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just on the notion of delegations to various ministries, we have considered the opportunity to present delegations or request delegations at the AMO conference. However, I believe that we can make much more productive use of time by reaching out to local MPPs, and particularly those that are in cabinet, to request meeting time at Queen's Park with the respective ministers. And ideally, we would be allocated an hour of time to be able to best present the municipality's position on a matter, have discussion not only with the minister, but with their chief of staff and their policy advisors, who would do the research and come back to the minister with a recommendation. And it's more quality time, as well as productive use of our time, as opposed to the rushed sense of the meetings at AMO, which are 15 minutes and oftentimes are reduced as a result of just rushing through, waiting for the various delegations to get to see the minister. So we have considered that, discussed it with the mayor, and my experience has been that where we have members of cabinet, it's much more effective use to get meeting time for one-on-one with the minister at Queen's Park in their comfort zone, and be able to present in a meaningful manner the municipality's position.
Thank you, Tony. And actually, as you put it that way, I fully agree with that, having experienced meetings on both, being at Queen's Park and delegations at Amos. So good plan. Okay, thank you. I was just curious and wanting to cover all areas. So thank you very much.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mary Caniff. Just to start with, I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Haddad. AMO, the 15-minute conversations, it's a run-of-the-mill. It's very quick. You don't feel that you're very much being listened to, because it's 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. If you can, and I've had the opportunity to set up a meeting with the Minister of Environment many, many years ago for 1 hour at Queen's Park. They're zoned in. So that's really where we want to be. So that was just a comment. Now, my question is, who determines, and I don't know who has the answer to this, maybe Bruce, who determines that there are species of risks or risk? Is that our local LTVCA, or is that the MOE? That's question number one. Question number two, if it's determined that this is an area where there is environmental concerns and species at risk, I would ask somebody's opinion. Is it then effectively hopeless that we will have that restriction removed? Because I know in Rondo Park, it's been very difficult over the many, many years with their issues there. So I would just like an opinion on that, if we should just walk away from it. Question number three is, what exactly is the municipality's position on this? Do we want the restriction lifted, or do we want to somehow negotiate and accommodate. So 3 questions. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Thank you, Your Worship. So who identifies it? It's really, it can come about through various means, right? It can be done as part of a due diligence and in survey work by a biologist. If it's a development proposal, for instance. In this case, I think there were documentation of species in this particular area that were reported. In this case, it's a couple of different potential species, one that's been cited and another that it's general habitat for. So we were notified by the MNR that we need to, consider our activities in that in terms of like cutting the grass, because you could be in contravention of the Endangered Species Act. So there are paths forward through the Endangered Species Act to remove restrictions. It's just a matter of how you get there, right? It could be land compensation. It could be other various aspects as well. There could be mitigation work that needs to happen without getting into all the details. We went down that road of kind of a draft application back a few years ago, but we found it was going to be pretty expensive. So that's when we kind of stopped to see if there was potentially, other avenues. And since that time, there have been changes to the legislation. I don't have all the details of that or a complete understanding, because some of them have just come into place, and there's been talk about other aspects as well, and they're kind of species specific as well. So that's really what we want to kind of revisit. Maybe there's another option to move forward, but ultimately we'll see what those options are. And if at the end of the day there's a significant cost to it, we would come back to council and, to your point, make a determination on whether it's worth moving forward, or is there another option for this parcel of land? Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Bruce. So again, I'll just sort of reiterate, how do you feel about it? You probably have a better handle on this than I do. When it comes to a restriction on a parcel of land, when dealing with the MOE, do you feel it's hopeless, or should we try? And again, our position is to relieve the restriction, I assume.
Well, I don't want to say it's hopeless until we revisit this again with, the government and understand the new regulations that are in place, and then report back to council. Because I think there are ways forward. It's just a matter of, do the costs outweigh the benefits in terms of, it's not a huge parcel of land here, or should we, just move forward and, focus on, as Councillor Sakatchi suggested, other avenues. But I wouldn't suggest it's hopeless at this point. Let's at least continue to revisit and see if there's options to move forward here.
Great. And through you, Mayor Kenneth. Thank you, Bruce. And so the municipality's position is that we do try and have the restriction relieved.
Yeah, I think we need to move forward with that, to at least investigate what that option is, whether it requires a full permit, and what would be required to get MEC approval to get that permit in terms of the level of magnitude of cost. So we'd bring that back to council. I think that would be the point in time when the municipality or council would make a decision on whether to proceed.
Oh, and that's when we would decide what our position is.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And through you, Mayor Kennedy. Thanks very much, Bruce.
I'd just like to add to that yes, we will. I'd like to think we're going to explore every option to free up that land in order to develop it. That's acreage that's fully serviced, and that's very much at a premium. So we will turn over every stone to make sure to try and get that converted over and get that lifted so that we can develop it. With that, I see no other questions. We'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Item 16, Community Human Services.
16C, Community Market Housing and Rent to Own Program.
Councillor Kirkwood-White and Councillor Latimer had questions. Councillor Kirkwood-White.
I don't particularly have, thank you, Mayor Caniff. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to express my sincere appreciation to Beth for the time that she has devoted to me and to the members of the Opportunity Villages Community Land Trust team over the last number of months in preparation for her report tonight. This is a project that has been underway now for almost 3 years, and I wanted to express my thanks to Beth for exploring the opportunity to come up with a creative solution to transition people from rental accommodation into home ownership. And we're hoping that Beth's efforts in discussion with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing will alert them to the fact that sometimes we need to change the rules in order to be able to make innovative things happen. So thanks, Beth, for the report tonight and for what you're trying to do to move this project along.
Councillor Latimer.
Yes, thank you to the mayor. I also too wanted to express my appreciation to Beth and her team for the detailed report tonight, certainly outlining our current housing situation and the very practical reasons why and limitations surrounding rent to own programs. I too am very appreciative of her patience and her team's patience with myself and the questions I've been asking over the past few months with regard to our housing in general. I did note in the next steps that in September, Housing Services will host an affordable market housing development forum. And I wondered if there was a date for this, I mean, whether or not it was going to be in person or virtual. And if there was a contact person that anyone in the community that would be interested in presenting or bringing a new idea to the table could contact and make arrangements to be part of that affordable market housing development forum. So it's kind of 3 questions there.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Caniff. Thank you for your question, Councillor Latimer. It's our intention because the intention of having an affordable housing forum is to engage a wide range of stakeholders. So these can be anywhere from people who are developers or builders to lenders to people or households with lived experience. So in planning the summit, it's our hope to have a planning committee that's made up of stakeholders from the areas that I've just mentioned. So going forward, we're hoping to, in the course of probably by the end of next week, release an expression of interest to those stakeholder groups for individuals with varied backgrounds to be part of the planning committee to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all the stakeholders that would take part in the summit. We don't have a date set yet. We're targeting near the end of September at this point. And the third question was,
is it in person or virtual?
In the current climate, it's our hope to engage people in person, assuming no changes in the current pandemic environment. That's how we'd like to proceed.
Wonderful. And I assume you're the contact person in the community if they want to express an interest in planning this and or presenting. Is that correct, Beth?
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from anyone who has interest or stake in affordable market housing.
Wonderful. Thanks again to you and your team, Beth. Keep up the great work.
We'll go to 16D. Fixing Long-Term Care Act 2021. Councilor
No, actually that one hasn't been pulled, Mayor Caniff. We're moving on to the next section.
Perfect. All right. So item 17, infrastructure and engineering services.
17A, Blue Box transition to extended producer responsibility model.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. It's Tim Dick, Director of Drainage Asset Waste Management. With me tonight is, of course, Huda Oda. She is our Manager of Waste and Recycling Services. So we have a bit of a tag team presentation. I get to start. So if we could get the presentation up on the screen, please. Just got to get to the beginning. So thank you, Mayor Caniff. Next slide, please, Huda. So this particular presentation is to speak to council and inform council as best as possible on the Blue Box transition to extended producer responsibility, or EPR model. This particular transition will identify, or this presentation will look at the eligible as well as the ineligible sources. So not necessarily the eligible or ineligible products or recyclables, but the sources of those recyclables, as well as timelines. And then in part 2, Huda will speak to you about CK's position, some outstanding issues, and then what our next steps and recommendations will be. Next slide, please, Huda. So as council may be aware, the province has initiated transition to Blue Box recycling, or for the Blue Box program across Ontario. This presentation is going to share various pressure points in determining what CK's position should be during the transition. You're going to hear us use a bunch of terms and a bunch of acronyms, so we thought that we'd try to put a glossary in which would help explain what those terms and acronyms might be. So starting with Blue Box materials. So this includes Blue Box packaging, paper products, and paper-like products. Next is Producer Responsibility Organization, or PROS. So that's an important one. The PROS have entered into an agreement with producers for the purposes of carrying out the responsibility of related to the Blue Box materials. And finally, the producers are the brand holders, importers, or retailers of the products that contain Blue Box materials. Next slide, please. So part 1 is the transition. So what is producer responsibility? So producer responsibility is a regulatory approach to waste management where the producers or companies that make and import products become responsible for the waste generated from their waste, or from their production and packaging. In Ontario, the Blue Box program is a transition from a model of a shared industry funding to one of producer responsibility. So up until now, it's been shared industry funded. It's going to turn exclusively to producer. Here are some further detail on the transition and roles. So how is operationally, how the producers are responsible for different from the current Blue Box model. So you might be wondering, what's the current Blue Box model versus what's the one we're going to be moving to through this provincially mandated system. So in the current model, called shared industry funding, the municipality is responsible for the collection and processing of the Blue Box materials. The municipality is also responsible for developing and delivering promotional educational materials for the program. In the future producer responsibility models, this responsibility becomes that of the producer. In terms of finances, currently, municipalities and producers share the cost of delivering the Blue Box program, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. Cost is roughly split 50-50, but it's determined by a complex formula established by the relevant organization. And then in terms of reporting, to determine the financial contribution of the producers, municipalities must report on the Blue Box program each and every year. This process is called a data call. So this is something that we've done every year, and producers in this process report on their tonnage of Blue Box materials produced. This reporting will be entirely transferred to the producers in the future model. So one important discussion point when speaking of the transition is the identification of eligible and non-eligible sources, as I mentioned at the introduction. So again, this is not the materials, but the sources of the materials. The good news is that under the new blue box legislation, which is on the right, there will be an inclusion of a number of different sources which weren't included in the previous legislation. So you can see that in the previous legislation, there's three basically areas that were included where there's more to be included in the new model, including schools, specific retirement homes, and open spaces, which currently aren't included. Next slide, please. So the transition levels of service and ineligible sources. So however, the expanded list does not include ICI properties. That stands for industrial, commercial, and institutional properties. So these properties continue to be ineligible sources of blue box under the new blue box regulation as they were in the previous version of the regulation. This slide lists the examples of ICI sources. Currently, all of these types of sources were currently eligible under the blue box in Chatham-Kent's blue box program if located within the curbside serviced areas and adhering to the program guidelines, even though they were not included or excluded from the expenses we claim in the data call. Under the producer responsibility model, or PRO, producers don't have an interest in continuing to service these properties. Hence, they will be greatly impacted by the transition. So in summary, there's a lot there. ICI properties will not be included in the final model. That's what to take away from this slide. Next slide, please. This one speaks to transition. So the transitions, this is a brief timeline of key events of the blue box transition. In July, pros will begin to submit reports to the MECP on how the system will be operated. Between 2023 and 2025, Ontario municipalities will transition to the EPR model. Different communities will transition at different times according to the transition schedule. For Chatham-Kent, that begins for us in January 2024. In January 2026, the pros will deliver one standard blue box program to all eligible Ontario communities. However, it's expected that pros will ask for a delay in the schedule as there are already many challenges. This may or may not affect CK. We're not sure of how that's going to go, and we'll keep council posted on that. And finally, the transition roles and responsibilities. The pros will work with producers to help them meet the outcomes set out in the regulation. There are 4 pros registered within the province of Ontario, with 3 of the 4 being involved in the curbside and depot blue box programs. These are Rice Solutions, Circular Materials, or CMO, and Resource Recovery Alliance, or RRA. Together, these 3 pros will determine the future of the blue box program in Ontario. Currently, CMO has proclaimed itself as the system administrator, meaning it will be acting on behalf of the 3 pros in laying out the plans during and after transition, and will divvy up the responsibilities among the pros at the end of that time frame. So with that, the next part is CK's position, and Huda will speak to that. Huda?
Here it is. Okay, I always forget how to do this. Good evening. Thank you very much, Tim. So in these next slides, I'll just try and unpack some of the complexities that come with making decisions in terms of Chatham-Kent's recycling transition. And with that, I'd like to highlight 3 main outstanding issues. The first has to do with partnering with pros, and these are the organizations that represent the producers of blue box materials. The second would have to be with the servicing of ineligible sources, as Tim outlined. These are mainly ICNI properties that are not eligible for service and won't be serviced by the pro. And the third item I'd like to highlight are indirect blue box costs and how we account for them. And these are just three of the main questions that we are asking ourselves as administration while we're trying to navigate through the transition and its impacts. So with that, I'd like to take a few minutes under each question and then try to determine or to illustrate the different factors that come in play. The first question here says, how should Chatham-Kent partner with the pros, if at all? And how should we do that in terms of our curbside service and our transfer station service? As you are all aware, we deliver blue box recycling or blue box collection in two methods in Chatham-Kent. 78 of all of eligible stops in Chatham-Kent are serviced by the curbside collection. That's through curbside. So these are either total carts or blue and black boxes. And 20% of all eligible stops are serviced by 8 transfer stations that we have situated in throughout Chatham-Kent. So how will these two look like under the new program? And then also, what are the impacts of partnering with the pros or the lack thereof to our current contracts? You know, as the current contract ends in December 2023, so that the plan was always to end it then, so that we can have a new RFP and a new contract in place in January 2024, which nicely aligns with the transition, our Chatham-Kent transition date to the Blue Box producer responsibility program. However, if there are any delays from the pros, if there are any partnerships with the pros that would need us to either extend the current contract or have the new RFP be a shorter one or a smaller one, there are still questions to be answered for us to be able to fully understand the implications then too. And obviously, there may be some options that are available during transition. And by meaning during, these are the years between 2024 and 2025 for us, as opposed to options that may be available or may not be available beyond transition. So that's 2026 and after that. When it comes to negotiating with the pros, so currently CMO, Circle Materials Ontario, CMO has announced itself as the proclaimed system administrator. So pretty much they're leading the group of the pros in negotiating with stakeholders and municipalities. And they have a proposed terms of agreements for service agreements between municipalities and themselves. And we are finding that municipalities have pretty much limited power, especially smaller ones and less dense municipalities like ours. And the current terms of reference that are put up by CMO are quite heavily to the advantage of CMO, not municipalities. So again, we can't rule out that we don't want to partner at all with the pros, but we need to fully unpack this and understand it before we make a decision on it. The second question has to do with how are we going to service IC&I properties, if at all? So as Tim explained, IC&I properties, these are the institutional, commercial, industrial properties. These were never eligible or were never required to be serviced under the old Blue Box regulation, and they are not required to be serviced in the new Blue Box regulation. The difference is, as Chatham-Kent, as a community, as a municipality that we were delivering the service, we had an interest in making the service available for IC&I properties within our curbside area. But in the transition, when the pros take over, they have no interest in doing that. They just want to stick to what the regulation asks them to do and just do that and do it well. So these IC&I properties will definitely be impacted. Now, what are we going to do about this? About the lack of service for these commercial properties in terms of recycling or blue box collection? Well, we are deliberating on a number of positions or a number of approaches. Do we want to see if we can partner with the pro for them to collect the IC&I property recycling materials and then we pay them in the back end? Do we want to tender another contract specifically for IC&I properties within Chatham-Kent? Do we want to use our own municipal assets and maybe even obtain more assets so that we are able to deliver the service on our own without a contractor or a pro? Or do we say hands off? You know, we're not required to do this. We have no interest in doing this. The IC&I properties, you know, you're on your own. you find your own solution. So these are the different pathways that we're deliberating on, and in doing so, we're considering many factors. Obviously, there are environmental impacts. One of the foremost one would be, do we want to see any recycling going in the garbage more than it already does? If we are going to partner, or if we're going to have more municipal assets that are service the ICNI properties, well, what kind of staffing impacts will that have? What kind of cost implications will that have? And are we even able to do this within the time constraints that are present? What's that going to look like in terms of the total levels of service, in terms of any risks or whatnot? All of these are, again, as I speak to you today, I don't have a clear answer for, and one of the reasons for not having that is definitely because things are still in development, and we have already identified some communication gaps, data information gaps that we don't have for example, we know we have X number of ICNI properties within our curbside area, but we have no concrete information of how many of them actually participate in our program. And that means we don't really know how many are actually impacted by the lack of service for recycling collection. We don't know what type of containers are used, the volumes produced, the level of contamination there is in the recycling stream. So all these questions are necessary for us to be able to arm ourselves with the most information possible in order to make an informed and educated decision moving forward. And finally, I'd like to just highlight quickly that there might be expenses, there very well will be expenses related to recycling or blue box program that may not be very obvious. One may say that, it's a very good thing financially for Chatham-Kent or other municipalities because we're going to be saving on all of the costs related to the blue box program when this is transferred over to the producers. And generally that is correct. The producers are, by regulation, responsible financially for delivering and meeting their targets. Excuse me. However, there may be some hidden costs that we need to be aware of and we need to prepare ourselves for. For example, as a community, as the municipality, we are interested in making sure that our promotions and educational materials are as best as possible and as informative as possible, because again, we are a community, we have an invested interest in making sure that more of the waste is diverted from the landfill, and definitely by delivering or having delivered the service both hand in hand, garbage and recycling, one impacts the other. Now that the recycling won't be within our jurisdiction with the pros, that still the impact or the overlap still occurs. It's just that there are now two entities delivering the program, not one. So we have a vested interest in making sure that promotion and educational materials are on par. The pros are required by regulation to have promotional education materials. However, again, it's likely to be standardized all throughout Ontario. And if there's any specific need or any targeted promotions and education that needs to probably be done by the municipality, the pro won't do it. At least that's our thinking now. Also, if we are going to enter in any agreements with the pro, there will be some costs in order to modify our services to what they need it to be, or they might be costs related to penalties if we do not deliver the service, or if we, for example, have contamination level beyond what they accept. The question also comes back to ICNI properties or ineligible properties. If the municipality or council wants to see the municipality involved in making sure that the service of recycling collection is still available for those, well, obviously there's going to be a cost. The cost will probably be higher in the transition and beyond than it is right now. And that's because our contract that services both residential and ICI property is for that entire curbside area. In the future, if we're going to do a contract, for example, only for ICNI properties, we might not even meet economies of scale. And so obviously there's going to be a premium to that service. So with those three highlighted, I hope Tim and I were able to give a highlight of the complexity and of the developments where the blue box transition is at. We definitely, our objective was to keep council updated on the developments and just paint a picture of what we're trying to think about and what we're trying to grapple with. So in terms of next steps, we are keeping an eye on developments as much as possible, as within waste management, given our limited resources, including the offer from CMO. Also, we're coming back to council next week with some permanent details and recommendations on delegating authority for contracting with the pros and on allocating some resources to address some of the information and data gaps and that are required for CK's transition. For example, the data collection exercise, that is, we're working on developing a plan for how to roll that out. And still needs to be completed regarding the ICNI properties that are ineligible sources. And in whichever way we choose to go, there needs to be an effective stakeholder communication plan that is to be developed and delivered so that we make this transition as smooth as possible for all of parties included. And definitely the overarching goal is to see the service as undisrupted as possible to the residents so that they do not see a disturbance within it. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention. Very happy to answer any questions you have to our best ability. Thanks.
Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Tim and Huda. I can appreciate the complexity of putting this report together because there sure are a lot of moving parts in this whole transition, blue box transition plan. And I also appreciated your next steps and your points of clarification, Huda, because I think it's really important for our residents and most particularly those ineligible sources to know that we are looking out for them and have the best interests in the fact that we would like to see a seamless transition and in fact maybe improved service through the transition, both environmentally, financially, and socially. So the question I have is I'm trying to understand, going back to the producer. So the producers will have direct service provider contracts with the service providers, not with us. In other words, we're not the middleman anymore. Is that an option? Am I understanding it correctly?
May I go, Mr. Dick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the question. So currently, the first community that goes into the transition is going to come into transition July 2023. And this is, to put it frankly, is quite freaking out the pros because it's very, very soon. If the pros are going to contract collection or hauling companies like Waste Connections like we do, they're going to need 18 months to 24 months to prepare. And they're not going to have that time. So at this time, what the pros are interested in is getting municipalities who are willing and able to actually be the middleman. So the middleman, be the people that administer the contract on their behalf, and they pay them for it. So for at least between 2023 and 2025, that's definitely their goal. 2026 and beyond, all hands on deck, pros will have to have figured out a way to move forward without the municipalities.
So if I'm understanding correctly, post 2025, then we may or may not be the middleman, depending on what the agreement is and what the benefits are versus the downside of it, correct?
To clarify, post 2026, we won't be in the middle unless we need to. Between 2024, which is Chatham-Kent's transition date, January 2024, and 2025, we as an administration are looking at the offer, the terms of agreement that CMO has on the table, and we're trying to weigh the benefits and the disadvantages and see, can we even do that? Do we want to abide by their terms and be the middle person? And if we don't want to be, what are the implications of that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification. And I also, I know that I look forward to hearing the community engagement strategy, especially with our residents and especially with those ineligible sources. Thanks again, Tim and Huda, for the presentation. Appreciated the update.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. All of my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Okay.
Moving on to 17B, motion of Councillor Wright regarding pilot project for Ridgetown Scout Hut.
Here you go.
Yeah. Councillor Wright.
Yes. Proposal that the municipal of Chatham-Kent enter into a legal agreement with the Kiwanis Club of Ridgetown that is satisfactory with the municipal legal department to lease the building for a 3-year period at $1 per year as a pilot project. Kiwanis Club will take full control of the building, and any money taken in as rent will be put back into the building to upgrade bathrooms, kitchens, etc. The Kiwanis Club will also be responsible for the liability insurance of the building, as well as the upkeep and the cleaning inside the building. The municipal will be responsible for the utilities, furnace, hot water heater, and all equipment of nature, as well as outdoor maintenance, as they do now for this property for the duration of the pilot project. Kiwanis Club will enter into a new contract at full expense of the building at the end of the pilot project. This is a 3-year time period and has allowed the club to get on their feet and establish a working business so they will be successful. The financial impacts of this building do not change for the municipal.
Councillor Pinson, will you second this?
Yes, I'd be happy to second that, Your Worship. And I have some comments.
Okay, so Councillor Wright, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Canna. This is a pilot project that we're trying to put forward here. It's a 3-year pilot project. As you heard from the deputations from Kiwanis and the Scouts, that the Kiwanis are trying to take the building over. They have no desire to put the Scouts out. They want to keep it that way. The building would be called the Ridgetown Community Center, and it would still have the Rotary sign on the front of it, as well as a Kiwanis sign. We started looking at this. The Rotary was invited, Kiwanis was invited. The mayor, Steve, Pensinel, and me were all at a meeting, and we discussed different ways of how it should work. At that time, there was a discussion that possibly the Scouts could pay $50 per week towards the utilities. And it was discussed that the Rotarians and the Kiwanians would help pay for that if they were able, and other fundraisers could be done to get it for them. It's probably $1,600 a year, depends how much they use it. It's $50 a week, but if they still want to use it on a weekend, it's a $50 fee as long as nothing else is booked in. The building, it's a good building, but it needs a bunch of updates, and the Kiwanis are willing to take that on because they know if they do it, there's grants up to 50% that can be applied through from Chatham-Kent, and the rest of the money will be from donations and fundraisings to do updates. The bathrooms are in need of repairs right away. They're still original from over 50 years ago. The Kiwanis, they will also pay $50 each time they use it, no matter what. Any service club can still rent it for $50 as they need it. The building, they've also made the intent that they will not rent it out for any alcohol events at all. The building is only getting used by the Scouts right now. Before the amalgamation, it was kind of a public building where anybody could rent it, any service club could rent it. Right now, it's really hard to rent it. And I got to admit, I still am a Kiwanian. I haven't been to a meeting or done anything for 3 years. I'm only on their donation list. So they're a good club and they're a strong club, and they believe in doing stuff for the kids in town. And I think they take the building and they do well with it and get it going again so that the public could use it. The taxpayers are paying for it now, and only the Scout kids are getting to use it. I'll come back at the end too, Mayor Canada. Thank you.
Councillor Pinsino, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Oh, thank you, Worship. Yeah, I had a lot of that into my write-up here, but I've received some calls from the Scout leaders as well, and they're concerned, and naturally they're not paying anything right now, so that is a concern to them that that there will be a fee. But honestly, the whole municipality is paying to keep this building going. It needs to be more of a community center, and it has to start being a little bit viable. As far as the Kiwanis Club goes, they are stellar in that community, and I think even one of the deputations said that. Like, they've touched every corner of that community, and their mandate is to help children, like all the way through. And there's no way they're going to change anything with the scouting group. They're going to get their days. They're going to keep their storage. They want kids to flourish. The municipality has a lot of these buildings around the countryside that are way underutilized, and this pilot project honestly could be the start of something good, where we can offload the costs of running these buildings through service clubs and yet they get the benefit of having the building and, maintain what happens within it. Yeah, the community center could be vibrant again. Honestly, like if you listen to the deputation from the Kiwanis Club, they got some big ideas of how they can make this work. And right now we're paying, I don't know, $6,000 or $7,000 a year as taxpayers into this building, and we're basically getting nothing in return. And at the end of 3 years, if they can put this all together, which I'm sure they're going to, like, honestly, this club is a doer. They can take over all the expenses for this club. The community is going to benefit because it's going to, it was mentioned the 4-H and different organizations can use it. The Scouts and the Cubs can still use it, same as they always have. I just think it's a win-win for everybody. And the Kiwanis are planning on putting every dime back into fixing up the inside. And as it was said in the deputation from the Scout leaders, that it needs some work inside. And they're willing to take that on at their expense. And I don't see how anybody can lose on this one, honestly. And I get it that the Scouts are getting it for nothing now. And that's a bit of a challenge for them. But honestly, I think that is very affordable. And I just hope council supports this. I think this is the beginning of a good thing for a lot of different buildings. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I guess I want to kind of comment on the initiative. Well, I think it's a fantastic initiative, and I'm very supportive of the initiative, especially with the private partnerships with the municipality, and especially with a group that is as extraordinary in the community as the Kiwanis. I guess my biggest concern is that both Councillor Wright and Councillor Pinsino just kind of touched on something that predominantly right now it's being utilized by the Cub Scouts, the Scouts. And I guess there's just been someone just stated, and I forget who it was, I think it might have been Councillor Wright, that there was discussions in a meeting that took place, and there was conversations. And I'm just curious to see, well, this sounds great, and I'm supportive of the initiative, but why, the biggest comment I'm getting from the Cubs is that there's really hasn't been a lot of consultation with them to see exactly how it will look for them. Reading this, the motion right now as well, this all sounds like it's fabulous to myself, but the challenge is that there's really nothing from a documentation standpoint that assures, the usage for the Cubs. So I just wanted to touch base with first Mr. Taylor to see if this is something that's going to be drawn up and then come back to council and with all the parameters in place, or is this just going to be something that's approved and then the legal documentation is kind of on its way and it's just going to be finalized like that?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. David Taylor, Director of Legal Services. My reading of this motion, Councillor, to your question about whether this would be coming back to council, is that this would be a decision of council directing administration to go enter into a contract on these terms. And as a result, normally we would see a situation in which there was a clear delegated authority for a member of administration to sign the document. But if you just read the beginning of it, it is saying that the municipality entered into a legal agreement with Kiwanis Club. So it's really a decision to enter into this agreement. Normally, we might see a different version of bring back a report with recommended terms, or there might be some sort of consultation with then council making the decision after all of the terms have been worked out. So those types of things that you were mentioning, like guarantees of scout usage, don't see them mentioned here in the report. And as a result, that's really what, or in the motion, my apologies, that's really what administration is contained by and directed by. So if those types of things were something that council wanted in place, either they could do an amendment to this motion or to address those other items, or could refer the matter back to administration to do some sort of consultation or work out some other terms, then come back for further decision of council. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Taylor. So essentially, because like I said, I'm very supportive of this initiative. I just think it just needs to be, kind of laid out a little bit, a little bit better. And I do think that it's something that would be, appreciative to be referred back. So I guess my motion would be just to refer back and kind of have a report on the feasibilities and partner implications on the pilot project referenced in 17B that provides details in a templated public agreement for council review. Because as mentioned, I'm very supportive of it. I just like to, I think all the users want to ensure that, that they're not going to be displaced. And I do not believe at any part of me that the Kiwanis would ever do that. I just think that it would be beneficial so everyone can kind of see what it would look like. And, like I said, partnerships like this in the community is extremely important, and it's going to be extremely beneficial to the Kiwanis, to the community, as well as to, all the whole, all the people who utilize the services there.
Is there anyone that will second that?
I will, Mayor Caniff.
Okay, Councillor Latimer.
But
there's a number of questions related to the motion. We'll go through those, and then we'll deal with the motion of deferral. Because I've got Councillor Latimer, Councillor Harrigan, Councillor Oche, and Councillor Finn all on the speakers list prior to this being brought up.
So, Mayor Caniff, can I just, before I lose the floor, can I just say one quick thing? Like, I'm not expecting this to take a lot of time. I just, like I said, very supportive of the motion, and I don't think it's something that would have to take a lot of time. Just wanted to ensure that all the parameters are kind of in place to ensure that all the groups, are going to be able to utilize the social community room as indicated.
Sorry, Councillor Sagachi. So does this motion get at what you're specifically looking at from what's on the floor right now versus what you want to see? Is there something specific you'd like to see?
No, I just think it's.
Does this cover it?
That covers what. Yes, that covers exactly what I'm looking at. It's just like I said, I just want to see the partnership implications, but very supportive of the motion. But I just want to see how it would look from a legal agreement before we just direct the legal department to go into the agreement. I think it's beneficial for council just to look at the agreement and the implications before we just say, direct them to do that. I think it's beneficial to look at the agreement coming back prior to saying, yes, that's all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we should be continuing on with the 4 people on the floor first, correct?
Sure, yep.
All right, so Councillor Latimer, Harrigan, Oche, and Finn, and then we will vote. And if there's any questions related specifically to this motion of deferral, we'll deal with those as well. So, Councillor Latimer, are you?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would like to have. I have some comments. Well, I'm not going to comment on the amendment. I did want to say I'm all for the premise of this motion, and I did speak with Councillor Wright yesterday. But while I'm all for public-private partnership, and because I think it's really important, an important model that we need to explore with regarding our ability to maintain and manage our community buildings sustainably. I would have liked to have seen in this motion, ensured access for the current youth group users like scouts and guides and other youth groups, also, and what that sponsorship would look like with regard to their costs. I would like to see, what the plan is for stakeholder engagement going forward with regard to this community initiative over the next 3 years. I also would have liked to see in the agreement, how would the booking continue? Because right now, the people who do use that scout hut, they have no way of knowing what or the plan for the months into September, and that's what they're doing with regard to their monies and who they call to book. Because right now, as I think one of the deputations said, it's not even on the books to be booked. You can't book it. And the fourth thing is, I wonder what the evaluation plan was at the end of the pilot program, and what that would look like. Because it just, reading the motion, it just says, it at the end of 3 years, it just automatically goes over to the Kiwanis. So it's nothing wrong with that, but I didn't see that stakeholder engagement that I think is really important. So those are those four things are what I'm going to be looking for in the agreement, in the legal agreement we have with the Kiwanis. And I would feel better if it came back to us so we can see that. And especially, I think it's the perception out in the community too, that if we're going to be looking beyond this project for other buildings and community hubs in Chatham-Kent, I think they need to know that right from the get-go, we're going to be engaging those stakeholders, particularly at the onset of the pilot projects, throughout, and then during the evaluation period. That's it. Thank you.
Upon further discussion with Judy, we're only going to take questions on the deferral right now. So I have 4 speakers. I have a number of speakers here. I guess I've got the Councillor Harrigan, Oche, Finn, McGregor, Wright, and Pinsino. Are all you want to talk about the deferral? Okay, seeing that. Okay, Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just very quickly, because there's a long list of speakers, I do want to share with Councillor Wright that I think the idea of the motion that he's brought forward is an excellent one. But it's really important for us as council to allow administration time to look at what the agreement would be, engage also with community to make sure that there is a really successful pilot. And also to consider some of the feedback that was provided, as we heard in those deputations. There wasn't, it seemed like there were some concerns that I think staff could potentially do some further engagement with. And I don't think it needs modifying in the motion to refer back, but I wonder if something like the Let's Talk CK tool could be used to survey and engage the residents of the community around potential future uses to really make a more wholesome report back to council. So I'm really looking forward to this. I love the idea of a pilot and think that the report that Councillor Sukachi referenced here will put us in a better position to support it and also scale it to other communities. Thank you.
Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not really sure if this is for the deferral. I'm just wondering why this was not able to be reserved by other people other than the Cubs or Scouts, sorry.
Yeah, that's a question that if this fails, then Councillor Oche, I'll come right back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Harrigan touched a bit on mine with the Let's Talk CK. My question is, with this motion, is administration going to be in contact with the Scouts group, speaking with them? Or is it just going to be speaking and looking at the Kiwanis and the Rotary and this building and not them as a stakeholder? Because my view is they did pay for it. They kept the building inside clean, as they all stated, as that was their agreement with the municipality at the time. Or does that need to be put in there that somebody does consult with a representative from Scouts Canada?
Thank you, Mayor Kent. This is Chris Teeber, her acting general manager, IS. Sorry, Councillor Fink, can you please repeat the question again?
I'm just wondering, with this motion to refer it back where it says a complete report, is administration going to be making a meeting with Scouts Canada to speak with them about their concerns, what they're looking at? Because they are a stakeholder and they did technically rent it. Their cost was to keep the building clean. So it did cost them. It wasn't a free entitlement to them.
Yes, as part of this drafting an agreement and bringing that back to council as per the recommendation on the screen right now, we will do some public outreach, including with the Scout group, to ensure that we capture all the audience and all the proper groups involved with this particular location. So we will make sure to do proper public consultation, whether we utilize Let's Talk Chatham-Kent or we schedule those meetings as required, but we will make sure to follow up and do proper public consultation on this.
Okay, thank you. That was my concern. That's it.
Councillor Wright, followed by Councillor Pinsno.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. On my closing remarks, I was going to put in there that, and you were at the meeting, and Steve and me and the Kiwanis and Rotarians both agreed that agreement would be drawn up by the staff of Chatham-Kent, and both of them would see the agreement before it was signed. The Rotarians, they were representing the Scouts at our meeting because they put the most into it. We asked them, we felt it was right to ask them in because they have put in for a lot of years to the Scouts. And there was an agreement at that day that everybody had to feel comfortable before anything would be signed. The agreement would be wrote up. The Rotarians would be there to read it. The Kiwanis would be there to read it. And from there move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Pinsno.
Thank you. I was going to say pretty much the same thing here. However, I don't know why we don't put in this pilot right now that basically what the Kiwanis put in their note, that nothing will change with the schedule for the Scouts. And then we can send this off to get drawn up by our legal and then have the legal come back here again. If you got to change the first few words, that way we can deal with it tonight. And council gets to see the final contract, basically, before we say yes. That way we can keep moving forward. That's just my opinion. I say we vote down the referral, and then just add that other part in.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you. Can you hear me? That'd be the first. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I got booted out and back in. I have a feeling that I come in the middle of Councillor Pinsno's comments, and I have a feeling that it might be where I was going with this, and somebody can just say yes or no. I was worried about the groups that use the hall and everything being put on hold and the unknowns there. And I wanted to know what actually timeline we were looking at to try and get information back from administration, because I didn't want them to not have use or understanding of where they were moving forward while we were deferring it back to administration to get a report back. So I would like to know if somebody can answer how long they think they need to get a report back, if that hasn't been asked. And I guess that will put where I'm at now on how I vote, because I would like to see this information come back, but I also don't want to put the user groups because I do believe in the philosophy and I think this is a pilot that we should move forward with. So I don't want to put them on hold while we're waiting for a report. So if anybody can answer me how long it would take them to bring this information back to council.
Your Worship, David Taylor, Director of Legal Services. I can provide a bit of a comment, but also would welcome Chris Teeber's comments on this as well. So there is a bit that we can't control there as administration, Councillor McGregor. in terms of just availability of the other parties in order to have a discussion. But I would say that in order to really have a fulsome discussion with the stakeholders and actually do let's talk or some other form of public consultation in order to get some feedback, I'd be imagining that it would take at least a minimum of 2 months in order to get that information, and then maybe a few more weeks after that in order to get it on a council agenda. But I do recognize that Mr. T-Bear, in charge of the IES team, has maybe other irons in the fire and other pressures as well. So if he believes it would be a different timeline, certainly he could correct me. That'd be my best estimate.
Thank you, Mayor Camp. No, Dave, I was thinking along the same lines as well, and speaking here with Rob Pollock, who's also on the call tonight as well, on the meeting tonight. We think about 2 to 3 months in order to properly do a sufficient amount of public consultation that we just committed to doing tonight, doing the Let's Talk and the outreach as required, and then working with our legal team to draft the agreement and put that back in front of council. So we're looking at around probably in the next three months.
Tony?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo the comments from legal and IS, we are approaching the summer season, so meaningful public consultation may be a little more challenging or may require additional time, given the fact that many will be away on vacation, not only in the community, but also members of our team that would be working on the project. So I think a reasonable time frame might be September to allow this to be done in a fulsome manner and to bring meaningful results back for council's consideration.
And thank you very much. And that's kind of what I was expecting. And I know that it's challenging at the best of times to get this back. I think there's a lot of groups in this community that have been having a difficult time getting answers as to their future and where they're going. So I'm just wondering if the movers to refer this back to administration might change their motion a little bit or let this fail. I don't know, but to allow something within their motion that the community groups have basically a status quo moving forward and have the support so that they continue to organize and book and utilize their facility while we're waiting for a proper report to come back. And the report that comes back could maybe then include some of our other communities that might be looking to do this, because I do believe this would be an excellent pilot project, but I don't want to also see their community have to be put on hold because we have other irons in the fire and which is understandable. We do in all different areas, but to allow our administration the proper amount of time to prepare a report or prepare a direction for some of our other communities that are in a similar situation. Thank you.
Councillor Scotchy, final comments before we vote.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I guess just a quick question to either Mr. T-Bear or Mr. Taylor. So you're just kind of touched base on the time frame for the report back. What are we talking about a time frame to enter? Let's say that this failed. What are we talking from a time perspective? Anyways, in regards to finalize this report. Sorry, not this report. If this motion was to pass today, what's the time frame that we're talking about for this to kind of be drafted up and finalized? Is it significantly less or around the same amount of time? Or because I do agree with what Councillor McGregor is saying, and then I also appreciate Councillor Wright and Councillor Pinsonneau's words, because I'm very, very supportive of the project.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dave Taylor, Director of Legal Services. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Certainly, not doing the public consultation piece, there's going to be some time saved there if we just had the direction to go. But there also, I think what you're getting at to a degree is that there's going to be some crossover. I would anticipate that even just with the direction, taking that, because we don't have a template agreement for this kind of unique situation, and we're going to have to talk with some of the people who have been involved with it just to understand really even what happens on the ground and try to work some clauses that actually work for this specific building. I'd anticipate that's at least a month. It could be more like 2 months, depending on how quickly you kind of get a response back from the other side. So it'll take us some time to really learn about the building, come up with a draft agreement, and then send that to these community groups. and then likely get their feedback. So you can't control it entirely, but I'd say it's at least a month to 2 months in order to kind of have that back and forth based on previous examples I've had with other community groups in other parts of our community.
Now I appreciate that. So essentially, it's not going to be a significantly amount of more time, then, so to speak. It's going to be just the engagement portion.
I think there would be some crossover between the need to do this drafting and this background information, and then also the community organization. So I don't think they're stacked right on top of each other. There would be some kind of aspects that both are happening at the same time. Like, for example, if we knew we were going up for consultation, we could start doing some of that background work and start working on the agreement. So it's hard for me to say exactly how each one would go, but I would estimate you probably got a month longer, maybe 6 weeks longer on the other approach that you're proposing to take here.
Sure. So, Mayor Caniff, one final quick question to Madam Clerk, just to see if we can kind of incorporate this all together. Madam Clerk, is it possible to ask I know this is a different motion that's on the table and it's mine, but is it possible if I just asked a general question to the mover of the original motion, if he'd be content with a part B to his motion where we can incorporate everybody's kind of concerns in one motion, or how would that look?
I think procedurally we'd have to vote on this. If this is voted down, then you could discuss it in option B for the other motion, but this is now on the floor.
Okay, so can I ask the original mover just a quick question before we vote on this?
That's up to the chair.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask Councilor Wright a quick question?
Yes.
Councilor Wright, if this were to fail, would you be okay with a part 2 to your motion that says prior to final approval, administration to complete a report on feasibility and partner implications on the pilot project referenced in 17B that provides details in a templated public agreement for council approval? So what it is capturing this motion that's on the floor. It's not taking away your motion, but we're still getting the report, and we understand that it's a good pilot project, and we want to proceed, but we want to have the feasibility and partner implications.
So through you, Mayor Caniff, our details, would it be what happens at the end of the 3-year project, and that the agreement is drawn up between the Scouts before they move on, and how much grace time they'd have before they start paying? Is that what you're kind of suggesting there? Or?
No, Councilor Wright, it's nothing to do with the 3 years after. It was just just so we could, I guess we're probably going down a rabbit hole if we continue the conversation. It was just a more so to try to get your motion through tonight in respect of time, but also kind of incorporating the feasibility and partner implications, because I am very supportive. It's just I just like to see it how it looks prior to supporting it. So I guess I will maintain my current motion on the floor. Even I was just trying to hope to kind of pass it through a little quicker. That's all.
Now, like I don't know what you're asking for here on the provide details. Is that what the legal is to come up with, or what are we asking for there?
So for basically, essentially, what this your motion is asking is to go ahead with this the transitional period without council seeing the final approval, what it'll look like to all partners and the implications. So what I was asked, it's going to have to come back to council anyway. So I will just keep my motion to refer it back just for final approval. That's all.
Well, it should come back to council to see the final.
But that's not how. Unfortunately, that's not how the motion was.
Yeah. Okay.
So to clarify, I guess what Councillor Scotchy is saying is he wanted to add a part B to it. Basically, says we can go parallel with getting the agreement done up and everything, but coming back to council. And I think Councillor Pinsino as well mentioned that. They said, before we actually do it, council will see everything and be able to say yes. And in the meantime, the Scouts can be brought into the discussion, and hopefully they can come back, and whenever it comes back to council, support it as well, to say this is a great project. I've heard nothing but all councillors saying it's a great idea. We just need more information. So I think that's what Councillor Scotch was getting at there.
That's exactly it, Mayor Caniff. Yes.
All right. So then we will now vote on this, and if this fails, we'll go back and then Councillor Wright can potentially put a part B in there so we can do parallel. But with that, I'll call for a vote.
All votes are in. Motion fails 7-9.
All right, so with that, we're back to the original motion. And Councillor Wright, would you like to, based on our previous discussion, would you like to add in something of Part B so that we could move both? I think we could meet everybody's objectives if we put that in.
Yes, I'd like to add that 17B on the bottom of it.
All right.
As long as Steve will second it.
Steve, will you, Councillor Pincinel, will you second that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I want to see the
yeah, subject to the wording, yes. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. That's what I was after. Thank you.
So is that good with you, Councillor Pincinel? Or sorry, Councillor Wright and Councillor Pincinel?
Yes, it is, Mayor Canada.
All right. And then I'll go to Dave Taylor.
That way we can get it moving forward.
All right. Dave, sorry, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just flagging the beginning sentence, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, start with that the municipality enter into a legal agreement. I believe that second portion then is a little inconsistent with that. So I really think it would be that something like that administration negotiate a legal agreement. And then I think that really works well between that additional. All
right, so are we good? Councillor Wright, Councillor Pinson, are you good with that to make it consistent with the Part B?
I'm good with it.
Yes, Mayor Canada.
Perfect. Okay, so with that, do I have any other, Councillor Sakachi, you have a question?
No, Mayor Kenneth, I just wanted to say I appreciate everyone's commonality in this. I think it's a very important, discussion, and I appreciate kind of everybody meeting in the middle to ensure all the objectives are made. So thank you.
All right, so Councillor Wright, I'll go to you for final comment on this.
I've already said what I had in final, but I hope this goes through, and this is the start of doing these buildings across Chatham-Kent, because we got so many of them that we're not using properly, and I think service clubs could run them a lot better. Before the amalgamation, this building was used every weekend for something, and it could go back to that again if it gets back to where the public can rent it, and the taxpayers are paying for it, and they can't use it, only the scouts, and not all children want to be in the scouts, so the other ones, they might play hockey or baseball, and they're paying their share too at those facilities. So I'm hoping that we can get this building back up and using it again. Thank you.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
Actually, Your Worship, I had asked a question that you were going to go back to. If that.
Sorry, I apologize, Councillor Oche. Yes, so Councillor Oche, could you repeat your question so that can be answered?
Certainly. I was just wondering why no one else was able to reserve the building other than the scouts. That's what we were told earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Rob Pollock, the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cemeteries. I can answer this question.
Go ahead.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. So it currently can be booked by anyone that calls in to book the facility. There might have been some confusion during some of the COVID restrictions. There's different restrictions on hall rentals where there wasn't staff on site. Where there was staff on site, there was we could ensure that there was proper COVID screening being done, vaccine checks being done. For certain halls that didn't have employees on site, they had different restrictions, and some of those were kept closed for longer or had reduced the amount of people that could attend the facility. So some user groups or people in the community might not have wanted to use the facility, either one, because it was closed due to COVID restrictions longer than other facilities, or there is less occupancy allowed in those facilities because there's no staff on site. So right now you could call and book the facility whenever it's not booked by another user group right now. And the current rates were approved by council in the 2022 rates for all our facilities and municipal services.
Okay, great.
So council, sorry, Mayor Caniff, we're still waiting for one vote on that. We haven't closed off the voting.
It never came up on my page.
Okay, Councillor Ote, how do you wish to vote?
I'll vote yes, please.
Thank you. All votes are in and motion passes 16-0. And now we move on to the last report of 17D, motion of Councillor Sakachi, municipal grass cutting.
Councillor Sakachi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So I move that the CEO appoint one single division to be in charge of municipal grass cutting for all parcels of grass throughout the municipality, including the PUC properties, to ensure continuity, consistency, and ownership of grass cutting operations. Administration develop a 5-year tender package for the 2023 to 2028 municipal grass cutting to be issued in the fall of 2022 and brought to the new council at the November 21st or December 5th council meetings for approval ahead of the 2023 budget, to provide successful builders with adequate time to purchase equipment and hire staff for 2023. And then 3, administration submit an internal bid to the 2023-2028 tender, including fully burdened costs to compare to the external bids for council consideration to ensure value for tax dollars. Now, I did not include this in my notice of motion, but I also wanted to add number 4, that administration investigate the costs associated with adding an additional cut in the spring months. So, either that would be, May or June, or June and July, the initial months of summer. And if I can get a seconder, I'll just speak on it a little bit. Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan.
Hi, Mayor Caniff. I apologize. I would like to declare an indirect conflict on this conversation and just remove myself from the conversation.
Okay. Councillor Kirkwood-White. Would you like to second this?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
All right. Back to you, Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkwood-White, for the second. So Mayor Caniff, we all I know that us in the rural areas are really hearing the struggles right now with the grass cutting, and I know that the contractors, so to speak, are taking some of the blame as well. And I don't really think that that's should be the course. They've been put in a very challenging situation with the late approval of the contract, and we all know how it is just in the yard to catch up. Let alone in a very vast municipality. So this allows us to have continuity. Right now, sometimes when we're looking at questions, we got to find out who to call, who takes care of the ownership with having so many different parcels. And I really think one thing I've learned in the last, almost 4 years is that during the spring months, we're always, kind of behind, in grass cutting. And I think that if we were paying the contractors for additional cut, it might alleviate some of the challenges that we not only see as a council, but the contractors and as well as the municipality as well. And just before I put this to vote, Mayor Caniff, I just wanted to see if I could touch base with Mr. Tiber briefly to see what's going to happen now with, being as that we are still so far behind. Is there any potential interim plans or solutions that we could do to do some emergency costing to approve to try to catch up some of the areas? So we're giving the new contracts the ability to kind of start at a clean slate and not so far behind.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So I know I might have Rob jump into the conversation as well. He's been managing all of his supervisors there that primarily manage the grass contract already in the Parks and Rec division there. But I know with getting a late start and recognizing the challenges that we're having, and a lot of the contracts are just put in place this week, today actually, and they're going to be going full till this week and trying to catch up and clean up everything. All of the parcels already, as part of the grass package there, have a level of service identified next to them. So the contractors are well aware of what that level of service is, and whether it's the height of the grass or the number of cuts or the clippings and that we spoke about before with the cemeteries. They are aware of that, and they're working towards achieving that certain level of service. So we are working closely right now with emergency contractors as well as the current contractors with these new contracts to get them out and try to get us to that level of service, and then going forward, then maintain that level of service going forward.
I'll let Rob just chime in here quickly, if you don't mind, Mr. T-Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a specific question, Councillor Scotchy?
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't want to make light of the situation, but there is some very challenging open spaces. You know, I can only speak into our area, like, you know, so there's some very challenging open spaces here. And, you know, it's getting to the point now where, you know, the contractors, like I said, you know, we have to make sure, you know, that the community knows that this is a result of us taking so long to discuss these contracts, right? So, you know, it's not necessarily the workmanship of the new contractors, it's the fact that the approval's taken so long to get to, right? So I think it's really important that I'm just really wanting to see if there's an additional game plan in place to help our new contractors catch up with some emergency cuts, because it's getting to the point now where, you know, I got a document on my phone here about 5 people just in the last week telling me that they've had ticks just from our parks, right? And when you look at our parks after they've been cut, it looks like, you know, that we're getting ready to harvest hay. And like I said, I'm not trying to make a light of the situation, because it's just not good for the municipality. We had Retrofest this weekend. You know, we're trying to encourage and promote tourism, and, you know, we're having beautiful villages that are only getting cut twice so far it's almost June. So I'm just wondering to see if there's any way we could try to help our new contractors catch up, so they're not stuck behind a rock, so to speak, and kind of get back into, you know, the swing of things. But I just have a feeling that it's going to be a month before they catch up, and it's through no fault of their own.
Yeah, you're saying a lot of things that are true. Like we didn't start the grass contract on time because of the tendering process was delayed. So that did put us back, and then we went into emergency cuts where we didn't have the extension of the current contractors because we were doing the tendering process, which took some time. So we had to go out and contact contractors to try to cut in the meantime, and we called those the emergency cuts, because we didn't have a contractor on the 1-year contract that we were tendering out. So different spots within the municipality did get behind because we are now reaching out to contractors to see if they would cut in the meantime. And that is a bit difficult, especially on short notice to them, and when they may already have other lots that they're cutting. And they are not, some of them were not familiar with the parcels that we were asking to be cut. Similar, like you were speaking about cemeteries. Cemeteries is a very large project. And if you haven't cut cemeteries before, that can be very difficult because it's a lot of detail work. So it takes a lot of time and effort, and it takes the right people to do that detailed work. You can't just fly around on a lawnmower in a large open area, for example. So our supervisors have been working really hard during these emergency cuts to get everywhere cut as much as possible. But when dealing with the emergency contractors, we have been running into difficulty because some contractors that we've dealt with in the past said they weren't available during the emergency cuts, but they were put in a bid on the tenders. So we had to contact new contractors and try to get them familiar with the areas and get them used to the quality of the cuts that we require. So our supervisors have been doing, have been working over and beyond, trying to get these grass cuts in the meantime. What happened was this did set us back. So now we're back, and Sun's parcels are trying to get caught up, and we had a lot of rain, which did not help. So like you're saying, could we add extra cuts in future contracts in the spring? I think that could definitely be something that we could look at. Right now, the contractors are working pretty much nonstop to catch up. And longer grass means it takes them a bit longer too. So they're trying to get it cut down, get everything trimmed back up. And that might take a couple extra weeks until everything's looking back to normal. So
thank you, Rob. And the reason why I asked some of those questions, because I just wanted to be very clear to the community that this isn't a reflection of the new contractors. This is a reflection of the position that they've been put in due to the late tender. So just wrapping up, does this motion here that's I've incorporated going to ensure that in the future years to come that we are not going to have this situation again in the next 5 years? And my last question to you after you answer that one will be just what are we talking here to by the time that we are cut up and we see our community in kind of a transitional period where the grasses are intact and cut properly and well manicured?
Yeah, that's a great question. So some of our parcels look probably already caught up. For example, we'll say Wallsburg. If you come to Wallsburg, they're pretty much already caught up because they got their contract extended early. So we're not trying to give certain areas a better quality cut than other ones. Some just have been on a contract for longer. So now we're finally got all our new contractors signed back up. So now we're also teaching them about the parcels and working with them. So a new contractor coming into cutting new parcels, that also takes a bit of time if they're not familiar with the parcels they will be cutting. So our supervisors are on site showing them how they need to be cut, which areas, so we don't miss things. And I would expect in some of our parcels that are in the worst situation right now, I would say probably 2 to the maximum of 4 weeks until they look how they should in a normal year.
And my guess is that's South Kent. Is that correct?
Some areas would be South Kent because we had that was the area where we had the most difficulty getting emergency cuts, and we actually had to acquire a mower for staff to actually help because we were having such difficulty getting emergency cuts over there. And with our cemeteries, because it's such a large grass parcels that we have within Chatham, Wallsburg, and Dresden cemeteries, and the detail work there. So yes, between those two, it's probably our 2 most challenging areas right now.
Well, looking forward to the next 2 weeks and getting caught up, and looking forward to working with our new contractors when they're in a position where they could do the job in a manner where they're not so much behind. So I appreciate all the information, and I do appreciate the past conversations with Mr. T-Bear as well. Thank you.
Tony, you had something to add before I go to our long list of councillors?
Yes, I'll keep it brief, Your Worship. Just to reiterate what Chris and Rob have indicated, we've had conversations internally. This is not a reflection on the new contractors. There was a series of delays that were caused that resulted in the late contracts being awarded, and we have to take responsibility for that. Unfortunately, it doesn't do much to remedy the situation right now, which crews are working as best they can to get caught up. And when, as everyone understands, when the grass is longer, we're not it's being mulched or not being mulched. It's just laying there, and it does look unattractive in some instances. And so as a result, it will take a couple of weeks of additional cuts to remedy that situation. We've also made efforts, as Rob indicated, for emergency cuts, as well as overtime by our own crews to reassign them to other areas where they could assist in the catch-up process to try and remedy, and focusing more on trying to get caught up within 2 weeks as opposed to 4 weeks. But the nature of the work and working with new contractors, it will take a a little bit of time to get caught up and then hopefully reach a standard where we are maintaining the service levels that are expected. So, for that, I can only apologize on behalf of the team, and we're working to remedy that as quickly as possible.
All right, we'll start. I have a list of at least 5 speakers. Councillor Foss, followed by Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess item number 1, I'd like to understand one single division to be in charge of the municipal grass cutting. How is that different than what's happening now?
Thank you, Mayor Camp. I'll start with this. So right now, the Parks and Rec Division manages the grass contract. All of their supervisors are the ones that are out in the field, being the main point of contact for all the different contractors all throughout the municipality. It's not with one single individual, but it is with all of the supervisors who are actually out in the field and working directly with the contractors. And then, of course, all of the supervisors report directly to Rob Pollock as the Director of Parks and Rec. So that is managing the contract once it's in place. However, the preparation of the contract and putting the tender together and doing the outreach and the process and the reporting is something that engineering assists with, just because of our familiarity there with the tendering process and with the purchasing policy and kind of assisting with kind of getting the parcels together, working with our GIS division, which is housed underneath the engineering blanket as well, identifying all the parcels, putting the maps together, putting the contracts, the sizes together, and putting that out to the contractors. So number 1, really appointing a single division to our knowledge, looking at this motion, would be that the tendering process, the contract preparation process, and everything, including the contract management, would now be housed within one single division.
And I guess your thoughts on that?
Because Parks and Rec are with IES, and we're all kind of working under the same kind of platform here, and ultimately we have no concern with that. It is going to come down to a workload distribution, only because I know the supervisors are in Parks and Rec are very strapped with a lot of work and trying to stay on top of this, as well as all their other duties of that they have, and ultimately just reporting to Rob and kind of the process with Rob being in charge of all the supervisors is something that we're going to be looking at and focusing on in the future as well. So it's going to be a challenge to have that as one division, but I think together, working with engineering and Parks and Rec, we could achieve that.
Okay. My next question is, there a while back, your division indicated that you were looking at changing the tendering process and enhancing the grass cutting and all that. How does this motion differ with that?
Thank you, Mayor Camp. So yes, we, as per our last report to council from engineering, the reason why the delay with this process is that engineering, through our cooperation with our GIS department, we identified a lot of parcels and a lot of, challenges with this contract if we were to just simply put it back out again for another 5-year term. So we're working with our legal department to work on some stronger bylaws. We did commit to doing a lot of public consultation this year to kind of clean this up and try to identify opportunities for improvement and opportunities for cost savings with this contract altogether. And that is something that engineering committed to doing, assisting with, only because the parks team just kind of doing the contract management of this. They're going to be quite busy throughout the summer managing this contract. And we are still committed to the engineering team doing that role, and then of course assisting with the 5-year tender package, which is number 2 in this motion.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Councillor Wright, followed by Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This might be the wrong time to put a 5-year tender out with fuel cost up 100% up and machinery up 20% in the last year. These contractors are going to put awful high tenders in trying to cover, because they don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. I think a 2-year tender might be better until the economy levels back out and inflation goes back down. I know myself personally, if I was putting a contract in, it'd be awful high right now with the price of fuel and equipment the way it is. So might be something that we could look at on a 2-year tender package. We probably get a better deal for our offering right now, because 5 years, it's so unforeseen, they're not going to know what to bid on it.
Thank you, Councillor, for that comment. I believe that is probably one of the key items that we'll be addressing as we review this whole initiative and the motion that is put forward as to the optimum term for these contracts, recognizing that oftentimes the vendors require a 5-year term in order to fully amortize the cost of the equipment that they have to invest in. But you're certainly correct in recognizing the increased cost of equipment, the increased cost of fuel, and whether or not a 5-year term is appropriate, but we'll certainly be addressing that and looking at the pros and cons.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. I can't help thinking that a longer term contract might be more beneficial to secure proper contracts. And as Tony said about contractors being able to amortize their equipment off, I suspect very much in our contracts that we could put in some form of a portion that will deal with fuel surcharge that would maybe be flexible to change throughout the years, so that they can bid on a contract with the comfort of knowing whether go up or down and what's happening with the economy at that point in time, that fuel surcharge could be used to rectify some of those situations. However, that is really not what I wanted to ask. And I am on question 1 again about a single division. And this, I'm going to relate it to cemeteries, as in Wallaceburg. We had new roads put into a cemetery, and I'm not quite sure what happened to that contract. They've left everything a mess and they haven't come back. So you compound that with long grass and wet grass being cut and a mess in the cemetery, which really concerns me, because I think we're moving on to Dresden to do roads in Dresden. And I would like to know, so I would like to know what we're doing to rectify that. And also, I can't help thinking that if it was under one division, or maybe cemeteries need to be separate, where we have managers of cemeteries that have more input on local situations and improvements that happen within our cemeteries. A lot of our community and constituents get very upset with long grass and an area is not cut. But where it comes to our cemeteries, they're very sensitive situations. I personally, and I suspect my fellow councillors, have dealt with the same thing. I have had multiple people come up to me in the community, which makes it very difficult when they're very passionate and they're upset, and that the grounds are not kept well. I fully understand the issues and the conflicts we've gone through with the long grass, the weather, and what's happened with our contracts. So I firmly believe that we need long-term contracts put into place. And I do want to understand better about having this under one division, because I know that our roads within there is going to come from under IES, where the grass cutting is coming from Parks and Rec, which is still under IES, but they're still under, it might still be under one division technically as we're talking about it now, but it's still under multiple areas within the division. And I'm concerned about the communication within those divisions, because I know within our own cemetery in Wallaceburg, we have separating conflicts that are going on there in the situation within our cemetery. And I guess if that's happening in ours, I suspect that's happening in other communities in Chatham-Kent. So if somebody could better explain to me that one single division and how that might be handled, I could maybe be better prepared on how I might vote on this.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll begin multi-parts to your question, and I'll defer to Chris with regard to the outstanding work that remains on the roadway. But I want to ensure that we maintain some context to reviewing whether one single division is appropriate for oversight of this particular activity or not. There's arguments that could be made that Parks and Rec should be a standalone operation division or department, as opposed to being incorporated with engineering, which is significantly large in span of control as it stands currently. So that's one that we want to be careful to closely review and try to determine the best outcome and allow for focus on the services that they're responsible for to be appropriately delivered at service levels that are expected. And whether that means extra cuts in the spring, a lot of times that will be contingent on weather, but having contracts in place that are not being renewed at the beginning of the season, but well in advance, should certainly address that, whether it's in a single division or not. But that's certainly an area that we would look at to determine if one single division makes sense, is feasible, and what the upside is, as well as the downside to the municipality before bringing a recommendation forward to council.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. If I could add just quickly about the condition of the roads there in the cemetery. So I was just made aware that engineering, it's an engineering project, the cemetery roads. That the reason why is that it's kind of an asphalt road related contract that we have obviously a lot of knowledge in with regards to contract preparation, the language of the contract, the specifications, and the contract management and administration. So we are, however, we work very closely with the parks team, specifically Colin Mardling there in the cemeteries, and he has been excellent with managing the contractors out there with the grass contract, as well as helping us kind of being the eyes and ears with the road contract. And I am being made aware of a challenge that we're having with the contractor, getting them to come back and restore and do proper restoration on that contractor. So we are working very hard right now to get that contractor to come back per the terms of the contract. And we'll make sure that we have a mechanism in place to clean that up one way or the other. As quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for that answer, Chris. I would hope that this possibly would affect the hiring of this contractor moving forward. But it very greatly gives me some comfort that somebody will be coming back to fix that and clean that up. And I hope that as we move forward and those new roads are going into the cemetery in Dresden, that we're aware of this ahead of time. I know when we have contractors out doing sidewalks, doing curb repair, doing different things where they cause damage or interference with property and landscaping, that we're very good at getting the contractors to follow up and fix up areas where there's been damage created. So I hope that would be the very same thing that would happen in our cemeteries. So I greatly appreciate your answers from both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Bondi. Councillor Bondi.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I wasn't necessarily going to chime in on this one, but I heard a lot of different comments from a lot of different people, primarily about the cemetery. And I'd been out to the cemetery to visit my dear old dad, and yeah, it was a terrible situation. So what I'm getting at here is I did talk to a couple of local contractors, and they effectively said, no, the city dropped the ball. They knew that the contracts were coming up. They didn't put the tenders out on time. So, where are we on this? Because these guys are blaming us and saying we missed it. And the city, in the last 6 weeks has looked really, really terrible. From boulevards to cemeteries to city parks. I don't know, do we need a review as to what happened? Because I don't really think this is an acceptable occurrence. That should happen more than one time. Something happened. I don't know what, like we've talked about it a lot tonight, and you know, what happened? Where was the miss? Where did we miss out on contracting grass cutting for the municipality? Was it our end, or was it their end? Like, I think the public really wants to know, like, who kind of goofed this, because, you know, I was walking through the cemetery and literally the grass was seeding. It was up to my knees. And then it was cut. So I went back a couple of days later, and I had somebody had mentioned, you know, you could put some sheep out there to like graze or something. But so where does the fault lie? I'm not trying to throw stones, but, you know, we are a transparent, you know, government. So who goofed this thing? I don't know.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'll start. I know Tony did speak to this point already about the delay. But if council recalls, we came to council late with this strategy to look at the 5-year contract, and we recognize that there's an opportunity for improvement with the contract and cost savings to help identify some parcels and grouping of some parcels better, and also a lot of parcels that weren't sized correctly for what ultimately we're paying and what was actually being registered in the system per our GIS system. So again, we identified a lot of opportunities for improvement. Our goal was to put out a 1-year contract and negotiate with the existing contractors from the last 5-year contract to try and get them to come back again. We had a approval from council to enter into negotiations, and unfortunately, that process didn't work very well. We were not able to negotiate per the terms from council as recommended. A lot of the negotiations fell through, and a lot of contractors walked away or did not want to negotiate per those terms, therefore forcing us to go out for a very quick tender process, which we did. We did in very quick turnaround, as fast as we can, to get something out there long enough for contractors to process it, understand it, and actually submit a bid and bring that back to council in a very timely manner. So unfortunately, the sequence of events and negotiation process that we were hoping would be successful did not prove successful, which then kind of led us to the delay.
I'll take you through you, Mayor Kim. So Chris, you didn't foresee this, that there would be these problems with this new plan? Obviously, retendering for this year, considering inflation and fuel costs, presumably your team would have foreseen that there would be some sort of difficulty in negotiation with pricing. So did you guys not see this coming?
We did. We not to say that we didn't. We were hoping that it would go through successful. We would buy us an extra year so that we could do what we wanted to do this year as approved by council. But we did have the tender package ready to go. So as soon as we put a time limit out there, when we reached out to the contractors, we gave them a timeline to come back to us with the negotiation process. And as soon as we hit that timeline and we found out that there was the X amount of contractors that were not going to negotiate or not willing to renegotiate their terms, we were ready to pull the trigger on the tender right away. Otherwise, we would have been still without a contract to date, because we'd have been stressing to put something together in short order. But we had that tender ready to go and ready to pull the trigger as soon as that timeline hit. I forget the days off the top of my head, I apologize, but the day after we put the tender out, once the closing came for that negotiation process, we put that tender out and we turned it around as quick as we could.
Okay, and thank you through you, Mayor Kenneth. So this has been a bit of a screw up this year, but I think we can assume our citizens that this will not happen twice.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Yes, again, we are committed to doing the public consultation this year and to working to strengthen that new contract, that new tender going forward, whether it be a 5-year or it be a 2-year with options for additional years, or whatever fashion that looks like to achieve the best cost savings. We're going to explore all those different options and make sure that we get something out in this year so that we're not doing this again next year.
And through you, Mayor Kenneth, and Chris, thank you very much. And Mr. Mardling, I appreciate your patience. I'm sure that guy's been pretty beat up over the last couple of weeks or so. So he's earned his wage. So thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
I'll add just a brief comment as well. Every year I've been, it's an issue. This time of year, April, May, June, is because the grass is growing real long. I've received a pile of complaints every year. It's a seasonal thing. And I guess you add in the perfect storm of COVID, supply chain issues, inflation, fuel costs, staffing, vendor staffing, weather, rain, the contract ending, the tender timing, all those things. It's the perfect storm to create what we're dealing with right now. I'm really looking forward that this motion will drive a much improved process for next year. And I'm looking forward to a year in which we're ahead of the game as far as grass cutting and we're not getting very many complaints. So I'm confident that next year it will be a much better process. So thanks for that. And with that, we will vote on the motion.
So all votes are in and motion passes 12-2.
Okay, we will go into notice of motion. Councillor Crew, Councillor Foss, and Councillor Sakachi. So Councillor Crew, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Marjorie Crew, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the June 6, 2022 council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas museums are a vital part of telling the CK story from our history of the Underground Railroad to the settling of all of Chatham-Kent, and whereas these community services align directly with the goals and objectives of the CK 2035 plan and support our ongoing initiatives in the areas of tourism and culture and our economic drivers in our community, and whereas they must rely on unsecure annual funding, grants, and volunteers to keep these collections of our history available to tourists and the public, I move that administration prepare a report to council by September 12, outlining, number one, the options for all or part of the operations for the Buxton Museum, the Black Mecca Museum, and the Wallaceburg District Museum to become more integrated under a municipal department for resource support and funding purposes. Two, base budget recommendations coinciding with departmental integration options, including funding options and or sources to do so. And three, that the options in the report are done in consultation and collaborative with the stakeholders. And four, in the meantime, that 2022 funding for these three facilities remain the same as 2021 funding and funded from the same source until the report returns to council for consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I, Joe Foss, will bring forward the following motion to be voted on the June 6, 2022 meeting. Whereas the Dresden Rotary Club has acquired 325 Metcalf Street in Dresden, and whereas they will develop this lot into a green space with planting of trees and shrubs, and whereas the municipality has a parkland tax grant policy, and whereas this grant policy is benefiting the communities of Ridgetown, Shrewsbury, and Merlin, I therefore request that the Dresden Rotary Club Park at 325 Metcalf Street be included in the parkland tax grant policy.
Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Caniff, I, Councillor Anthony Sakachi, will bring forward the following motion at the June 6, 2022 meeting of council for voting and discussion regarding short-term rentals in Chatham-Kent. Whereas the municipality licenses businesses where people sleep, such as hotels, motels, beds and breakfasts, etc., and whereas there's a significant increase in the number of short-term rentals in Chatham-Kent, many of which are advertised online, marketplaces such as Airbnb, Vibro, Homestay, etc. Be it resolved that I make the motion to direct administration to conduct a Let's Talk survey to obtain feedback and comments on short-term rentals in the municipality, and 2, that the information and feedback gathered be reported back to council by September 2022.
Okay, we'll move on to closed session reports. Councillor Kirkwood-White, and I'll get Councillor Finn to second that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council met in closed session tonight at 4 o'clock. All members of council, with the exception of Councillor Brock McGregor, were present. Council directed administration on proposed disposition of land by the municipality with regard to offer to purchase property identification number 005020143 Water Street, Community of Chatham, Section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001. Also proposed disposition of land by the municipality with regard to offer to purchase part of property identification number 007010244 Tecumseh Street, Community of Ridgetown, Section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001, and personal matters about identifiable individuals with regard to CAO recruitment, Section 239B2B of the Municipal Act 2001.
Seconded.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll put it to vote.
Still need 3 councillors. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, we'll move to approval of communication items. Councillor McGregor and Councillor Hall, can I get you to approve those or move those, please?
Certainly. Thank you.
So seconded.
Any questions? Anyone opposed? Carried. Reading of the first and second reading of the bylaws. Councillor Bondi and Councillor Pinsino.
I will move it, Your Worship.
Okay, and seconded by, can I get Councillor Finn?
So seconded.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Third and final reading, Councillor Foss and Councillor McGrail.
So moved, Your Worship.
And seconded.
Anyone opposed? Carried. We'll move to resolution of council in closed session adjournment. And we'll have, we'll go over to Councillor Kirkwood-White. We'll have Councillor Oche wrap it up for tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Chatham-Kent-Council adjourned to its next meeting to be held on Monday, June 6, 2022. And that Chatham-Kent-Council authorized itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss permitted by the Municipal Act.
Councillor Sakachi, would you like to second the closing of council?
Mayor Ken, if I do, is it possible to make one brief comment? Just there was no, I didn't hear in the non-agenda business. I apologize.
Okay, I skipped over that. I apologize.
No,
so yes.
it's just a very brief comment. I just wanted to say, despite the loss, I just wanted to give the all due respect to the Chatham Maroons on their effort and the journey to the Sutherland Cup. Memorial Arena was packed with over 2,200 people, and it shows how vibrant our community is and how we can rally behind a team. And nothing to hang their heads on. They had a great effort, and the community is extremely proud of their effort and the organization.
Okay, Councillor Latimer.
Yes, thank you, Mary Kenneth. I wanted to remind everybody that this Wednesday, June the 1st, we will have our 2022 Chatham-Kent Celebration of Older Adults. Councillor Marjorie Crew and myself will be hosting this event where Dr. Jamie Richardson will make a presentation from Life by Design, talking about overcoming the #1 older adult health challenge. followed by, of course, recognizing our Senior of the Year award nominees and the announcement of the 2022 Senior of the Year award. So I'm hoping everyone has a chance to join us during this digital event, either through Facebook or YouTube or your TV, 10 o'clock on Wednesday, June the 1st.
All right. Anyone else on agenda business? Seeing none. All right. Councillor Oche, will you second the Councillor Kirkwood White's motion? All right. Councillor Sakachi, will you second that?
So moved, Mayor Cannon.
All right. Anyone opposed to closing this council meeting at 8:49 p.m.? Hearing none. Have a great night, everyone.